Hi, this is Professor Brennan. I'm back, and we are going to continue our discussion about communication in the small group, or verbal communication in the small group, expressing ourselves in the small group. We had finished talking about the 4 different levels of communication, and now we're going to start talking about group climate. So I want you to think about group climate as the atmosphere or the emotional tone that you have or that you create. All the group members kind of create that. Okay, and think about what that means. Think about your group right now, and what is what's happening there? How do you feel in that group? How do you feel about all the group members? When you guys started talking, is it friendly? Is it open? What is the emotional tone there? Okay. So it's an atmosphere. Group climate means an atmosphere, emotional tone that group members set and create while interacting with each other. So it is requiring you, it's through your interaction. Remember, communication is interaction. Through your interaction, the way you interact creates a tone or an emotional climate. And we're going to talk about the different ways that we communicate and how that sets certain tones and can set the tone of the atmosphere of the group or the group climate in certain directions based upon the way we talk and the way we communicate and the language that we use. Okay? And by the way, this is a theory from Jack Gibbs. Okay, so we're going to look at 6 different ones. And the first one, they're thought of as, I don't want to say when we make statements, but we're thought of like how we say things, and we're going to look at them in terms of statements and how we communicate in certain ways, and we talk about them in these different categories. So each one is going to have their own category. And the first one in purple, all of them will be in purple, are the ones that we actually want to work on and avoid, and we want to work toward the blue here. Okay? So evaluation versus description. What do I mean by that? So when we talk in a tone that feels evaluative, we usually start with the word you. You're at home and you're talking to your siblings, or you're even your spouse or your partner. You never put the dishes away when you after you dry them. You always leave the light on when you leave the room. You really should brush your teeth after you eat. Now, that's a pretty obvious one. But those other two, what do they sound like, right? They're going to make you be on the defensive, right? There's other ways that you might be able to say things that are not going to put people on the defensive. I want you to think about the ways you might have communicated in your group so far. Have you communicated in a way that made people feel attacked or defensive? And this doesn't mean you're a bad person. We're not looking at this as good and bad. We're just looking about what ways can we communicate that's helpful to creating a safe space. Remember, we talked about in the beginning, creating a safe space where we feel like we can be our authentic selves and talk about what's really going on with us. But we need to have a group climate that is as open and that we feel safe enough to do that. That we're able to, at that level, the sharing feelings level, we're able to share who we are. So description is where you're actually taking responsibility for your own perception. Okay, let's just say, instead of you never put the dishes away, you have to dry them, is you might say, you know what, I really love it when the kitchen is all cleared away. So I'm going to wash and you dry it. And would you mind putting them away? Like, how can someone change if you don't tell them what you want, right? That's taking responsibility for what you want. Or if they say, you know what, all I want to do is dry them, then you put the dishes away, right? But that's what it means, is describing what you want. Rather than evaluating someone and telling someone what they're doing wrong, tell them what you want. Like, here is another one. I've noticed that our electric bill is high. I wonder what we could do to make that lower. Right? That might sound a little manipulative, but it's also kind. Rather than, you're not going to pick on someone, you involve someone in solving the problem. Okay? So think about that in the terms of the way we communicate in the group, how we can do that. Right? You might think of it in terms of as being more diplomatic. Try to avoid to be evaluative. Okay, here's another example. Control versus problem orientation. Control usually means the person is trying to force or create a solution that they want on another person. Oftentimes, a person that is a recipient of that communication feels like it's a parent to child kind of communication. And it kind of is about that person wants to get what they want. And so they'll say things like, this is the way I want it, and there's nothing more to talk about. That sounds like a parent, right? Because I told you to. Let me remind you that I am the person responsible and therefore have the final say about the project. Again, controlling. What works better in a group situation, when we're talking to the whole group, is try to think about the needs of everybody, right? Try to think about what everybody wants. Keep people involved in the whole decision-making process. Don't have one person decide what's going to happen. One way you might say is, I truly believe that together we can arrive at a common solution. Right? That's setting up an openness and a willingness to, in an invitation, right, to talk about and to work through stuff. So you want to communicate in a way that invites people to talk with you rather than telling people what they should do. Again, this is the way we can communicate that will help with our group climate, just so we're all clear on what this means. Okay, strategy versus spontaneity. And Mr. Gibbs is the one that's come up with these categories of looking at it. So in some of these, it's not going to mean exactly what you as you think of it, but this is what he's come up with. So when we say it means strategy, we mean people who, and you might have done this, I think I've done this for sure, is that you have an idea in mind that you want, and you try to exaggerate, either under-exaggerate or there is no under-exaggerate. You either over-exaggerate something or you understate it to try to put the attention away or put something on more, the attention on something in order to get what you want. Usually you're embellishing or you're withholding information, but it's a strategy that you're doing, and your motive is to get it the way you want it. Okay, this is what happens when you discover that someone's doing this. Oftentimes this is like someone's personality too. But when you discover when someone's doing this, is you can feel like used. You might even feel betrayed. Your feeling of trust starts to plummet, right? You might feel taken advantage of. We do this kind of strategizing when we're afraid. So ask yourself if that ever comes up for you in the group, will you find yourself, doing this? Ask yourself, what am I afraid of? Okay, because oftentimes we do these things because we're afraid, one, the project's not going to get done. You're not trusting other people. All of this stuff. This is why small group is wonderful. All these things are going to come up. And the key is you just want to work through them and talk about what's going on. So spontaneity in communication is when a person allows things or situations to evolve naturally. So no one's motive is to get what they want or to get it their way. And oftentimes their communication is transparent, meaning what their motive is obvious. They're not trying to hide anything. The communication sounds more like a request. You're able to ask for things. So let's say let's go back here because I want to finish this idea. Let's say you were you were feeling afraid, right? And so one of your go-tos when you're feeling afraid is to try to manipulate a situation. And people do this, okay? It's normal. But rather than doing that, maybe you would say, you know what? I'm scared that we're not going to get this done. I'm really worried about this. Can you guys help me to feel better about this? Can we come up with an idea of how we're going to approach this? Right? That's honest. That's transparent. You're going to get a lot more than if you try to get your way or dominate or control or use those other methods to move through as you move from your problem to the solution, your project. All right, now, neutrality versus empathy. Now, neutrality does not mean neutrality in a positive way, okay? It's not positive. Neutrality in this case, Gibbs, means indifference. So it's when we act like we don't care. Now, I know you all have had group members. If you don't have group members now, which I hope you don't, but if you've ever done any group work in the past, you know the folks that they act like they don't care. They don't have any opinions. They don't share what's going on. They might say things like sometimes they're passive aggressive, right? Their communication sounds like it can be kind of aggressive, like so, or they can be like whatever, right? But when you act like that, when you think you're not bothering anyone, you're totally affecting the group. You're making the group create like an apathetic kind of group climate. It doesn't mean that you have to be upbeat all the time. It just means you have to be involved and committed, right? This group is like a relationship for you. So what you don't want to do is communicate. You don't give a rat's you know what about the group. That's what neutrality means. What you want to do is think about how you can communicate that you're interested and that you care, because that's going to create a group climate that's going to be vital and be alive for all of you and create vitality for you. So here are some examples. Wow, that sounds like you got a lot on your plate. If you're trying to understand someone, I totally get where you're coming from. Hey, I've been there. How can I help? Right? Those are how you can communicate empathy to your group mates. And finally, the last one I'm going to finish up with this is superiority versus equality. So actually, it's not the last one. We're almost there, though. Superiority versus equality is this. When you act like you're better than someone, we've all had that experience. It never works, right? It's pretty easy. You really want to think about how you communicate in a way that shows that you're on the same footing as that person. And the key to that is just being respectful. Don't assume that you know more. Don't assume that you know less. Assume that everyone's in the same place. Be on that assumption, and you will create a climate where you all feel free to make mistakes, be right, be wrong, all of that. That's what you're after. Okay. Certainty versus provisionalism. This kind of goes along, it continues on with this idea of superiority versus inferiority or equality. What you want, you don't need to know everything. The person who acts like a know-it-all and knows everything is annoying. That's the annoying person. People don't like that person in the group. It's not helpful and it's closed off and you don't get to learn anything. What you're after is keeping an open mind. Let things be open-ended. You can come to some closure, but get everyone involved. So you don't want to have language or communicate in ways that say you know everything or decide something's not going to work before you have all the information. That's what the certainty kind of create, that kind of group climate that's closed. But what you want is open so that you all can learn as you go along and trust each other. Okay, and I've given you some examples here. So I hope that this is helpful for you and that you all can create the group climate that you want. I know you can. Thanks for listening.